Hello and welcome to Zaragoza Canales. I am your host, Paola Zaragoza Canales, and today in Tales of an Entrepreneur, we're going to talk about bad leadership. So, I have news for you. If you're in the mission of becoming an entrepreneur and leading other people, you might end up reading a lot of books about leadership, or you yourself have decided to become a leader and entrepreneur because you've seen other people lead an entrepreneur. But what if I told you that the reason that you made that decision is because of bad leadership? Yeah, you heard me. Bad leadership is something that you don't learn accidentally, intentionally, on purpose. It's not written on books. You just see it and say, like, yeah, I can do a better job. If you're doing exactly the opposite, I got news for you. You're a good leader. What makes a bad leader? And I'm going to list some items and use some fictional examples for movies and series because even though I myself personally experienced said list, I don't want to be sued for defamation because of my previous employers. I have receipts, I have witnesses, and yet I will use fictional examples. But here we go. First, taking credit of other people's work, lacking trust, overworking, refusing to advocate for compensation or other types of rights, hiring or promoting the wrong people, shifting blame to anyone else but yourself, failing to provide direction, micromanaging, focusing on weaknesses rather than strengths, and failing to set expectations. Also, poor communication in the sense that you can be passive aggressive, failing to accept responsibility, not listening to individual concerns, and creating a very intimidating work environment, not being clear, not watching your tone, poor influencing from the top. For instance, if you're not leading by example, if you're not present, and if you're not improving workplace dynamics, you lack strategic thinking. You don't anticipate, you don't challenge, you don't make the tough calls, and you don't see the bigger picture. You lack you lack time management skills, and you really don't delegate. You don't know how to conflict resolve. You also have an attitude of being a know-it-all, or for instance, that you kind of have this attitude of kumbaya, everyone's working together, when in reality it's a facade. You always think about yourself without considering others. You have an attitude of it's not my problem, you just deal with it, or I passed through that turmoil, you should also pass through that turmoil or through that hardship, like a put up or shut up kind of attitude. You implement one size fits all styles or solutions. You lack focus. You are used to the comfort zone. You don't pay attention to your employees or the customer or clients or investors, get overtly invested, and have a culture that is really dysfunctional, lacks common sense, and people might think that it's a whole bunch of a group of people who really don't use their brains, and among other traits. If you're doing exactly the opposite, I have good news for you. You're a good leader. If you said, like, oops, I think I misstepped on something, I committed a mistake, that's a good sign because you're owning responsibility. Please um write a nice forgiveness letter to your employees or whoever you hurt, and say like, I'm sorry, and own up to it. That's a nice way to start being a good leader. If you heard all of these examples and don't feel identified and feel even threatened, or like, why would I even say this? And oh, these new younger generations are fragile, etc. Um, I'm sorry to break it to you, but you might be a bad leader. But moving on, I'm gonna give you more concrete examples using the movies and series. First, Michael Scott from The Office. He's highly inappropriate, has a really weird sense of humor, makes inappropriate and unprofessional comments, misuses company resources and time, and doesn't know boundaries. He's overly concerned of being liked and tries too hard and comes off as uh, really toxic positivity kind of attitude. Then there's Miranda Priestley from Devil Wears Prada. She encourages giving mundane tasks to other people and pitting people against each other, all in the name of being notable, and then sabotaging without even considering how it might affect her. She's all that, oh, this is what I did, this is what I went for through kind of attitude. You should also go through this. Then there's this historical figure called Peter the Great, and which was turned into a Hulu series, I think, called Peter the Great. He is savage, incompetent, a product of nepotism, narcissistic, and refuses to consider outside opinions, to a point where he kills people just because you don't agree with his politics and strategy. And this was so in self-interest, so egregious, that even his wife plotted against him and made a coup and ended up dead because of that sort of a toxic environment. So you might lose your empire while you're at it, not only your corporation, a whole empire. Then there's horrible bosses. They're aggressive, sociopathic, quick to anger, don't know boundaries, and they're really out of touch with what's going on with the corporation, to the sense that they mention, oh, I don't know why so many people don't want to work. People don't want to work anymore. Maybe you should ask yourself, why don't people have to work? Maybe it's the salary. Maybe it's the environment. Maybe it's welfare. Then there's Michael from The Good Place, where his good intentions don't exactly translate in his actions. He's highly ineffective. He crumbles under pressure. And when he crumbles, he has really childish tantrums and blames other people. He's dishonest, uh, often ends up in sabotaging and even torturing people. He's very overprotective and overtly involved. Then there's Annalise Keating on How to Get Away with Murder, where she violates laws and ethics to get away with murder. She lies and makes her students break the laws in the name of her reputation. She's very manipulative, dishonest, lacks integrity. You name it, she has it. Then there's the morning show, which is the more egregious types of examples. This happened in real life, unfortunately, where there was harassment, grooming, inappropriate advances, even unfortunately a mass shooting, uh, aff- um, affairs, people being complicit in a whole conspiracy, bullying, all behind closed doors. So this show was running, everything looked perfect, like nothing was happening, but the reality was another one. Then there was a Don Draper from Mad Men. He's very egotistical and acts in self-interest without taking into consideration how that action will affect his colleagues, leading to disastrous results, to the point where his office has to close because of those decisions, and other people cannot get opportunities because of his decisions. He is brilliant, but that doesn't translate to good leadership. And that is basically what entails being a bad leader. Again, if you are doing exactly the opposite, that means that you're a good leader. If you identify that you committed a mistake, own up to it, become responsible, say you're sorry, and remember that leading is a whole learning process, because the whole point of leading is that you have to learn to lead yourself. If you can't lead yourself, you can't lead others. So you have to first learn how to be kind to yourself, how to manage your time, your efforts, and your energy for yourself, because that is going to project how you do that same thing to others. So basically it boils down to, if you can't be kind to yourself, you can't be kind to others. And this is also applicable even if you don't have anyone else to manage. And this is for situations like me, which is just me, myself, and I, or with multinationals where there's many people. And you can see other examples in these movies and series. So, for instance, there was this situation where the employee, I don't remember who um, was taking the appropriate hour of lunchtime, but the employer had this knack of seeing the employee at the desk when he left and when he arrived. So, for instance, if the employer was taking, let's say, an hour and a half for lunch and left at 11:30 and returned at 1, you should be at the desk at that time. So you really ended up having a half an hour lunch, which is really bad. Other types of situations that I've seen and that I unfortunately experienced are where, and this is very notorious of internships, is the fact that these internships require the group to move to somewhere else, and that somewhere else might be in your same country or across the ocean, and there's no sort of guidance to the day and day uh, of managing things. So let taxes, banks, supermarkets, living, etc. And you have this information. Why? Because if the leader of the group asks around, the probabilities that you have other programs going on will spill out. And if those other programs you provide some sort of guidance, I might say, hey, it is in the common sense that you provide me those resources and guidings to us, because we are lost, we're new at this, and we need help. It's not too much to ask. But unfortunately, that is not the case, where the majority of the people will say, oh, that's not my problem. You signed up for this. If you can't handle it, there's someone else waiting for your seat. It's that type of attitude where it shouldn't be that way. If I have to move somewhere else, I, in my common sense, should expect some sort of guidance. It is not to the extreme of treating me like a baby and extreme hand holding, It's just the fact that this is a whole new place, maybe speaking in another language, and I might need some help trying to get used to this. It's not that hard. It's not rocket science to make it work. But unfortunately, those problems were said. Solutions were even pointed out because most people just delineate the problems and don't find out solutions. The group provided both. People made the job easy to solve the problem, and even then they were like, "No, that's not my problem. That's your problem. That sounds like a you problem. No, that sounds like bad leadership." So with that, a small rant before leaving the podcast. But with that, I'll leave you with this. What did you like? What did I leave out? Leave that in the comments. Drop a like, a follow. If you haven't followed me, make sure to follow me in Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Spotify as Zaragoza Cardenales. And I'll see you in the next time. Bye.